Man's participation in the kitchen has always been shaped by how society has viewed the task throughout history. In most cultures, cooking is viewed exclusively as a woman's job to such an extent that any man's involvement in the kitchen could easily affect how society views their masculinity. Men's participation in the past has been limited, especially in domestic culinary experiences. In her article, Cooking and Femininity, Elizabeth Lawrence First explains how, in primitive societies, men's legitimate participation in cooking was connected to religion and rituals. This task was mostly implemented during ceremonies and understood as sacrificial offers. In modern Western society, if men do the cooking at home, it is mostly party event dishes. Women do the everyday cooking of everyday meals in the invisibility of private life. When men cook for the family, it is usually not considered proper food. It loses its value because the food prepared by men is considered as an easy snack, like cooking bacon and eggs for the kids. This depiction of men as lousy domestic cooks plays a big role on how gender roles prevail in society. Men usually view themselves as designated barbecue masters, since society states that this is a task performed only by males. Yet, even though barbecuing can be considered a method of cooking, it is only prevalent during holidays and special events, and it is not a daily cooking method. Women's presence in the workforce has helped reshape the boundaries related to domestic culinary experiences, incrementing the chances of male participation in the kitchen. In the article, A Century of Change in America's Eating Patterns, Douglas E. Bowers emphasizes how, spurred by labor saving household technology and the civil rights revolution, women were ready to question the old assumptions about their position in society. The US Census also shows how women's presence in the workforce has dramatically increased since the 1960s. Married women in the workforce has pushed the gender role of cooking to the side, not completely, but it has significantly changed the way Americans consume food and it has forced some men to pursue domestic cooking. In the research report, Masculinity and Food Ideals of Men Who Live Alone, Carrie Selleck and Wendy Chapman conclude that cooking seems to be becoming a lot more known for guys that are single, and that overall, the participant presented an ideal masculine identity as a man who is concerned about food and nutrition, who practices what they perceive as healthy eating, and who can cook. It is important to clarify that men do run the culinary industry and sometimes often reflects the two different aspects of culinary involvement. We have the domestic cooking for the family performed by women, and we have the culinary industry where the percentage of men in culinary occupations is more than 80%. The type of cooking that was performed in my leisure project is set out to strictly break the gender barrier of a domestic everyday leisure activity. This experience is set out not so much to point out how men are unable to perform in the kitchen at home, but how society has identified many activities with gender. Inverted roles are usually what help us learn what the opposite gender experiences. We have learned how society sees a female politician with the Iron Lady and how a woman who is ruthless is seen as a sensual being by watching Whip It. The constant oppression that women experience on a daily basis can be further visualized with my project, because even though women do most of the cooking at home, they do not reflect the same numbers in the culinary industry. The ability to cook is often seen as vital, yet many men are still kept away from the task. The importance of knowing how to cook is not only very efficient for survival, but also to carry and support others. Most men in modern society still see an invisible boundary with their household kitchen. It is viewed as a woman's place of enfranchisement, where they identify and feel in full control of it. This applied to the way my mother felt about her own kitchen. Her thought was that as long as I was dependent on her culinary abilities, I would always find a way back to her lovely meals. This cultural blockade was not broken until I convinced my mother of the importance of this cross-gender activity. Living on my own has definitely impulsed my desire to learn how to cook. Convincing my mother was not as hard as I thought it was gonna be. After all, she did not witness my struggles with my own diet during the years that I had moved away from her. This activity challenged me to change the way I saw my own diet. It was very difficult to follow instructions and implement time management, especially when everything was made from scratch. The hardest part was keeping up with all the multiple tasks that she had assigned to me. I was really glad that my mother let go and did not involve my gender to the activity and concentrated in my training. I also noticed that even though my gender didn't affect the activity, the project that I chose is seen as a leisure activity for men because it is not seen as a job for men. Therefore, I strongly feel like women still identify with cooking as a responsibility, and it might still be difficult for a woman to see this activity as a leisure activity as much as it is for a man. I can honestly say that in fact I enjoy cooking and it is something that I could do in my free time. Yet, I feel like it could also be my responsibility because the image of my perfect household will be where gender lines are not involved.